What's going on today, Internet? Selfish here with Retrospect. We're going to take a look at the U8 today, and this is being advertised as the R35S Pro. If you're not familiar with the R35S, it was the device that came out before the R36S. Surprise, but got in a little bit of hot water and was pulled off the market pretty quickly. This here is supposed to be a Pro version of that, and we're going to find out if it truly is. Let's take a look. Before we get into all the goods, we're going to do a quick unboxing here. Now, this is cool because it looks like an Anbernic box. When Anbernic used gold in their box, I can't remember which handheld used gold, but it was a very similar layout. Usually they use silver, but they did use gold on one handheld, and for some reason it's escaping me. It tells us that it's a U8, it's made in China. Also says it's a U8 and a U8. Really boring box other than the fact that it looks nice, but it actually is a very clean setup. And on the back here, it does say 128 gigabyte R35S Pro. So that's where the R35S Pro comes from. I would have called it a horizontal, but hey, that's just me. Who am I to judge or name these things? So we're going to open the box here real quick, and inside we do have our device. We'll put that off to the side. We also do have a screen cover and wipes. That is a very thin screen cover, but we do have a screen cover and wipes in there. Underneath here we do have a origami accordion. Should we try it again? Whoops. Origami accordion that has directions in it. It actually kind of looks like the Powkiddy manual. This kind of looks like a Powkiddy in white. It actually, yeah, interesting. It is not a Powkiddy, though. They've used a similar box before, and this does say it has an RK3326 in it. I'm glad it says it here because all the advertising says AK3326, and that is not a chip. Also, if you look up AK3326, you find a lot of AKs that are not handhelds. Well, they could be handhelds, but they're not gaming handhelds. I'm guessing right here we've got a Type A to Type C. Type A to Type C charger. Yay. Cool. So we got one of those. Don't have any of those laying around, so that's good. I like companies like GKD that just stop putting the chargers in the boxes because they're like, you have enough of these. You don't need any more. That out of the way, and voila. Kind of bounced a little bit. All right. What do we got going on here? So, wow. The plastic actually feels really nice. It almost feels like the Anbernic plastics. So maybe that's why they put it in an Anbernic box. And I already powered it on, apparently. I hit the power button. So here we go. Before we get too far into this, like we always do, let's go over the I/O real quick. We will start at the top right here. We do have shoulders and trigger buttons. They are very clicky and very little travel, which would be good for shooters. We do have our volume up and down, a reset, and our power button right there, which I clicked when I pulled it out of the bag. On the back here, we do actually have a couple of what I like to call rubber grips, but they're actually supposed to be so that your handheld doesn't slide off the table. It's supposed to give it, like, yeah, I mean, it's not going anywhere, right? These are actually not supposed to be used for grips, but I think they give you more grip on the device. It does say made by Handheld Game Console, so this is not Game Console, who actually does make the R35 and R36. On the right and left sides, there is nothing on the device. We do have dual stereo speakers on the bottom here. They're downward firing, obviously. We do have an SD hole 1, a 3.5 jack, a Type C in for charging, and an SD hole 2, which is your game card slot. So it looks like there's no game card, even though this says it's 128. So this is a 128 gig card in here? Now I'm curious. 64. So even the box says 128. This is only 64. So we'll look in the box. Maybe there's another card in there wrapped in the screen cover that I missed. And then that brings us to the front of the device. Here we do have our sticks. They are clicky. These seem like very short travel, but they are inset. We do have our face buttons, which actually feel like R35S. If you've never used one before, they're a little stiffer, a little flatter on top. They're not bad buttons. They are very tiny, though. Very tiny buttons for how much room is available here to put buttons on, but we'll see if that affects the gameplay of it at all. We do have our start, function, and select buttons up here. Very clicky. The micro switches on here are heavy. You can hear that. And then we do have our D-pad, which is okay. We'll see how this performs. It might be okay. It's a little stiff right now, but if it's anything like the other devices that this is supposed to be mimicking, this will break in over time and become very loose, where right now it's pretty heavy, but it does have a decent central pivot, so it could be usable. And then we also have our 4-inch screen with a screen cover on it. Let's listen. That was somewhat satisfying. Almost worth it, right? And then that's probably about how thick the actual screen cover is that they sent me on here is. Let's go through the specs of it real quick. It's already probably booted up. Sure is, because I accidentally hit that power button again. Our U8 here is running Linux, and it is EmuElec is the system that it's running. It does have a 4-inch OCA IPS display. Its resolution is 800 by 680, which is kind of unique. I don't think I've ever seen a device with an 800 by 680. I could be wrong, but I don't think I have. It is rocking an RK3326, regardless of what it says on all their advertising that it says it's an AK3326. Its GPU is a dual-core G31 MP2, and we have seen that on handhelds before. It does have 1 gigabyte of LPDDR4 RAM, 64 gigs of storage, which is actually on that memory card, not actually internal on the device itself, though you can add additional to that. It does have dual set high precision inset sticks. They are not Hall effect, but they do like to call them dual high precision. It also says no drift. If you look up their marketing materials on there, they might not drift when you get it. They may drift someday because they're definitely not Hall effect sticks. It does offer external Wi-Fi, which we will talk about throughout this. Its audio is the dual high fidelity speakers that do face towards the bottom. It does have a Type-C charger on the bottom here, Type-C out, and then there is that OTG port right up on the top with another Type-C. It also does have that 3.5 millimeter jack at the bottom. Its battery is a 3500 milliamp battery, which it gives you about 8 hours. I would say that's probably pretty accurate, but we'll find out as we go along. And again, it does have that dual memory card setup, so your internal storage is actually that 64 gig card, and then you do have an additional card here. Both could be a 512, so you could get a terabyte worth of games on here if you wanted to. All right, let's dig in. Overall here, getting into testing, I think the buttons are really tiny, and these are really loud, though you don't use start and select very often. Another thing I found is with EmuElec, you use the select and the X or B button, depending on which system you're in order to get into the menu. You don't use that function button. So the function button is pretty much not used except for to get out of applications if you want to. You can do select start start, or you can do function start. I don't understand the need for this button if they're not going to program it to be the hotkey button. Instead, they're using the select button, which is fine that they use the select button, but then there's no reason to have this function button there. So I think that may get changed in some future custom firmware for this, if there's any available. Being that's EmuElec, it'd probably be pretty easy for somebody to go in and tinker with this. We may see some tinkering with this. I would say, even though it's a 3326, it would be probably worth it, and we'll go through some gameplay here in a minute. These sticks could travel further, but they don't. They're very, very short, and I'll show you here. So there's a lot of room left for these sticks to travel. Now, they're not bad sticks. They work pretty well for what they are, and I think they're in the right spot because this is a retro game console, and you are going to be playing retro games on it. If you're going to play some higher end systems, I would say that these sticks are in the wrong spot, but they're fine for this, and the way they're inset here is nice. It keeps the device pretty well flat, and I'm going to see if I can show you that here, but the sticks, it's just slightly taller than the D-pad, so it makes this a lot more pocketable for you if you're somebody who wants to put a 4-inch screen in your pocket. I think that there is an advantage there. This D-pad is decent, and I'll show you that in the gameplay. You can pull off some Shinookens and some Shadukens, but these buttons are definitely too small for this handheld. I think they could easily put bigger buttons in here. There is definitely more room for these buttons, but these work fine for their purpose. They do have a decent bounce back, so they rebound pretty quickly. They don't inset underneath anything, which is good. They are above the shell the entire time. In fact, they've got plenty of clearance. They could even go down further. Apparently, I started a game, so that's not too bad. It is nice that we have those clicks on these sticks, but it's not that big of a deal. If you are going to get into or out of a game in bed and you need to use start and select, these are going to drive you nuts, including the person that you're sleeping next to, or your dog, or whatever. It's going to drive them nuts. The shoulders are also very loud. These are probably in the top 5 of loud shoulder buttons I've ever tested. These are running on a pretty stiff micro switch as well, so they are a little loud, a little clanky, but I have found this actually relatively comfortable to hold. You will find that your hands right here in the pads at your fingertips actually sit right on these slide pads, aka grips for the handheld, and so you're not sliding around in your hand or on the table. As I showed you before, it's really going to stay nice and tight on any surface that you put it on, your hands included. All in, I think it's pretty good. We'll do a little gameplay and we'll wrap her up here at the end. Well, that was an experience to say the least. And if you are wondering what the R35S is, that is what this is right here. This is the R35S that this is supposed to be modeled after. As far as I can tell, the D-pad, face buttons, and possibly the sticks are the same. They are painted in different order, but they're pretty much the same. As you can see, this thing is collecting dust. I've pretty much just kept it in order to make sure that I have continuity in my game console line in case I do need to bring these back out for review. It's been a while since I've actually touched this one, but I was really into it when it came out. And then obviously the R36S came out and took this and blew it out of the water. Even though they're more or less the same thing, this one here happens to be modeled after a Powkitty, where the R36S is modeled after the Anbernic RG353 or the RG351. I'm not sure, one of the two. Let's put that aside. In a world where the Anbernic RG40XXH exists, I'm not exactly sure where the place is for this. So the price is right, and it is also a 4-inch screen, but they're not comparable. The H has a much nicer screen in my experience. I know you might see conflicting reviews on this, even from friends of mine. I spent a lot of time with this handheld, and there are some things that drive me absolutely insane about the screen. One of them being these horrible horizontal lines that are on here. I'm going to show you. Just go into a random game. If you didn't notice in my gameplay, now you can see there's these horizontal lines that are always on the screen. Absolutely, it's just mind-boggling, and it gets in your way all the time. And by in your way, I mean it really throws your focus off the game because you can't stop focusing on these lines once you notice that they're everywhere on this device. You can even see them here. The other thing is this is a 5.3 device, where the 40XXH is a 4.3 device. So on a 5.3 device, you actually are getting full real estate on this 800 by 680 screen, which is nice, and you're getting full real estate also on the Anbernic, but on here, because it is a 800 by 680, it's kind of an awkward size, and 5.3 is okay in some gaming systems. I think most people would tell you they prefer, especially in retro gaming, to have a 4.3 screen. You can change the aspect ratio around on some stuff. It will allow you to do that. Everything has its own settings though, so this actually does allow you to get full retro art, but it doesn't save the cores most of the time after you make the changes, so you can play through that game and you gotta go back and make the changes. I tried to play Duke Nukem. I can't get the controls right on this thing to save my life, and whatever controls that were set up on here originally were not set up for the N64. So I got it somewhat usable, but not playable. But this is an RK3326, so you are also losing out on some of your higher end gaming that you're going to get in the RG40XXH. Now this is usually about $10 to $20 more. I'd say it's probably worth it, but if you don't want to spend that money, this is not a bad device to get. Another thing that I ran into is I tried multiple Wi-Fi dongles on here, and there's different dongles. I tried different fittings, whatever. I use these though, these particular two on every handheld that I have. When I can't get a dongle to work, these two particular dongles work on everything, and they do not work on this handheld at all. So I was unable to find any way to get Wi-Fi on this device, which is really kind of a bummer because I'm really big into retro achievements. If you followed this channel before, it's just one of those things that I like to do. It's just kind of one of those weird, stupid passion projects of mine. Wow, did you see that screen just go out? Some of those weird passion projects of mine is using retro achievements. If a device doesn't come with Wi-Fi, that's okay if I can use Wi-Fi. Also, in their marketing, they do say that you can use external Wi-Fi. If these two adapters here that I have don't work, there's no external Wi-Fi adapter I've ever come across that will work in this, and I have an entire box full of them. So you're going to go without Wi-Fi, so just know that. Also, I did try to run a external monitor off of the OTG port. Was not able to get a Type-C to HDMI or anything like that to work off of this. I even tried hooking it into a dock. Didn't work that way either, but an external controller does work off the OTG port, so if you want to play with an external controller, you can definitely do that. You're just not going to be playing on a screen bigger than this, so you're already going to have the screen pretty close to your face. At that point, you might want to use the controller. These buttons are extremely accurate, so when you push them, you really have to push them in order for them to register. Otherwise, you're just going to keep pushing them, and they won't register. And I'll give you an example. See how nothing's happening? And I'm pushing this button. I'll show you. I'm pushing the button. Nothing's happening. But if I push it really hard, oh, nothing's still. There we go. Now I got it to go. So they get stuck. It does have the nice feature though where you can go select start to get out of games, which I think is always good to have because that just makes things easier. Oh good, it did save my joystick because it was in here as a non-joystick device. So the joysticks were pretty much doing whatever they wanted. These joysticks aren't terrible for what they are, so that's good. I think that's a good thing. All in, for the price, I mean, this is a good beginner device if you're not into this hobby yet and you don't want to spend a bunch of money and find out if this is going to be good for you. But for someone who's been doing this for a while, I have a hard time even looking at this as a beginner device when so many other good handhelds exist in this price point. So that's just going to be my 2 cents on it. But I will have links to this, and I'll even put a link to a USB dongle for you down on my thingamabob. If you're looking for a Wi-Fi dongle, I'll tell you which one to get. There's one that's always on sale on Amazon. I just have to look it up. I'll throw it down on my thingamabob for you if you're curious or want to get a Wi-Fi dongle. Just know that if you do get this device, at least on mine, it is not going to work. It could be a QC issue, including my screen, which I believe is a QC issue because I've seen some people rant and rave about the screen already, and these horizontal lines that I'm seeing are driving me nuts. And then on camera, it will also pick up vertical lines that I can't see by my eye, so that's fine, but you can see it on the camera, so you know they exist, but that's okay. I don't notice them when I'm playing, but the horizontal lines you do actually pick up on all the time, and once you see them, you can't unsee them. I'd say this is a good bargain for the price, or you just spend a couple dollars more and you get something like the RG40XXH, and I think you're going to be a little bit happier with it, and it's going to have more longevity. It is a 4:3 screen, so it is going to match up with a lot of the retro gaming systems, so if you're into retro gaming, you're not going to get a lot of letterboxing with that. But that's all I got for today. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, share this video with your friends because sharing is caring. It also helps grow the channel, and we want more people around here so we can have more conversations. Also, don't forget to check out one of these videos on the top of the video. That will lead you to another video that I made, I think. I don't know, Google picks it by itself. Maybe it'll give you somebody else's video. But it's going to pick 2 videos that it thinks that you are going to enjoy. So click on one of those and enjoy it, hopefully, and like and comment on that one as well. But that's all I got for today. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye!